As we're tracking through, so Rav Shaul, he's gone on his third missionary journey. We read about this big rite in Ephesus in chapter 19, and then he goes to Greece, and then he goes on to Macedonia, which is a part of connected to Greece. Then he goes to some other places, and it says in verse 6, interestingly, here we see a shift. The author switches from they, and he says we. We, these are the we statements. These are three places. In fact, this is how scholars can trace that Luke is the one who wrote this book. Because when you look at where Luke is journeying with the Apostle Paul, and you see these particular locales right here, they've been able to deduce that it's in fact Luke is the one that wrote this. And oh, by the way, he's also the one that wrote the third gospel as well, because we see terminology very similar of the two. And it says, and we sailed from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread. After the days of unleavened bread. So what are they still doing? They're still celebrating unleavened bread, okay? Right? Now, this is after the ruling in Acts 15. It says, and we sailed from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread, and we came to them to Troas within 5 days, and there we stayed 7 days. So Paul's talking about, or Luke's telling us what's going on. They're on this journey, and they're traveling to different parts, and we've read about a lot of the good things that they're doing. And then here we go, verse 7. And on the first day of the week, on Yom Rishon, on the first day of the week, when we were gathered together to break bread. Whoa. This is the first day of the week when we gathered together to break bread. So this is one of the classic texts that Christianity is oftentimes understood to say this is one of the earliest references to the fact that they were worshiping on Sunday. And that Sunday is the official day of Christian worship, because it says that we were gathered there together to break bread. And so what is breaking bread? Well, oftentimes that's understood maybe as a reference to the Eucharist, to having communion together. And whatever it was, this is something that we think that was possibly an ongoing practice. And then we left to go back to Macedonia. So I just want to talk about this for a little bit there. So on this first day of the week, it says we were gathered together. It's the same term here that's used in reference. In fact, Luke gives us, he says, on day one of the Sabbath, is what it says there. Literally, it's the same thing that's used in reference to Yeshua's resurrection back in Luke 24, and also in John chapter 20, verse 1. On the first of the Sabbath is the term. And that's just the Jewish way of reckoning time. It's just a Jewish reference to in Judaism you have day one, Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, Yom Shalishi, Yom Revi'i, and so on. And then you have one day that has a name. That is Yom HaShabbat. It's the Sabbath, right? And so Luke is interesting because he seems, for all purposes that we can see, he is a Gentile, and he is familiar with many things within a Gentile terminology in his Greek writing, but he's also very thoroughly acquainted with Jewish practice. And it kind of sounds like a Gentile who practices Judaism. Guess what? I mean, maybe some of us identify with that. So the real question is, when is this first of the week? Because whatever this was, this kind of points back to, again, the same term that's used in reference to Yeshua's resurrection. If you look at a footnote here, this will reference Revelation chapter 1 too. It says in there, it's where John says, "And I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day." And it says nothing about the first of the week there, but the assumption is that the Lord's Day is simply a reference to the first day of the week. Now, I do think that it possibly was, if we look at historical texts. But what day is this? And so let's continue to read, though, before we kind of delve into that. And it says, and on the first of the week, in verse 7, we were gathered together to break bread. Paul began talking to them, intending to leave the next day. So I guess the question will be, is when is the next day? If it's the first of the week, I mean, is this happening on Sunday, and this is an allusion to Monday? But a Jewish reckoning of time, when does the first day of the week begin? It begins at night. So it's very possible that this could have been a Saturday evening Havdalah service.